Hi everybody, good evening. It is Monday, January 11th, 2016. Tonight's webinar is in and about siblings. We want siblings who are on the webinar to be able to ask questions. You can show this later on if you're a parent. You can show this to your siblings. The idea here is that a sibling can ask any question. She can, or he can send it in to my moderator, Michael, this evening. Michael will then pass them on to me. If you are a parent and you have a question about siblings, about how to respond to their concerns or their reaction or something to explain to them about it, feel free to ask any questions about siblings. And then if we have no more sibling questions or about siblings, then I'll go on to other questions about any topic if you would like to. So we don't have any pre-submitted questions this evening. So what that leaves it open to is anybody who wants to submit a question, then Michael's going to post them for me to read. So I'll wait and see if there are any coming in, and then I'll go from there. And Michael will keep track of them and pass them on. Why can't we talk to our brother at a vote? 12-year-old. Very, very good question. The basic reason is because we want him to focus on himself and on getting better and whatever that means for him. We want him to eventually be able to talk to you, but sometimes talking to family can make you particularly homesick, or you can end up getting in some of the same kinds of old fights and discussions that you were having when you were out at home, and that can be a distraction. I use this analogy. You know when somebody gets in hurt, right? Like medically, not in the way that we're talking about at a vote, but when somebody gets hurt medically and they take them to the emergency room, sometimes they don't let all the family members back into the emergency room. And they do that so they can focus, so they can keep it very simple. And so we start off our program similarly to the way that it would be with a medical issue. We start off with less communication. Then, as things progress, you can have, your brother can have phone calls with his parents, sometimes even phone calls with siblings. That can be part of it. And then they can write letters to you throughout. So it starts off with a lot of focus and concentration, and then we let more and more people talk to them. And that just helps us to help him to focus on what his challenges and issues are while he's with us. So that's why we do it. And we know that it's hard and sad for many people when we do this. We also know that it works. So thank you for asking. What do I tell my friends and my brother's friends where he is at when they ask at school all the time? Part of this is you get to decide. You get to decide what you feel comfortable with. So if you want to say he just went away to a school, we are technically a school. We are technically an accredited school, excuse me. So you can keep it that general if you like to. If you're more open and you want to tell people he's away at a therapeutic program, you're welcome to say that. I would talk to your parents about how they feel about it. I would also talk to, maybe ask your parents to ask your brother in a letter how he feels about it. So you can just talk about it very vaguely and talk about him being away at a school. Or if it's a close friend and everybody feels comfortable with it, then you can talk about him being at a therapeutic outdoor program to help him. Sometimes the problems that a child has at home are so well known that it's not necessarily a secret. I will tell you how I felt about it with my son. And that's different than a sibling, but as a father, when my son was at our program 10 years ago or 9 years ago, whenever it was, I told people where he was at. Because for me, there was nothing to be ashamed of with being in a program. For me, going to therapy or going to a therapeutic program means that you're trying to make your life better, that you're working on some things. That it would be like being ashamed of going to the hospital for a sickness or for an illness, is the way that I think about it. So for me, there's no shame about it. And I tell people all the time that I've been going to therapy. In fact, for the last 18 years to the same therapist, because I think that's a part of a healthy life. Just like going to the gym doesn't necessarily mean you're out of shape. It means that you want to work on your health, right? So that's how I think about it. If you're embarrassed or you don't want to talk about it, or your parents feel that way or your brother feels that way, make sure that all people's feelings are considered in it, and then you can just talk about him going away to a school where he's learning some stuff and keep it really vague and say you don't know all of the specifics. That's one way to do it. Is it better for my relationship for my brother if I write him letters since we were not getting along when he left? 18-year-old. Again, I don't know your brother specifically, but what I would say is I think that if you weren't getting along, that might be even more of a reason to write a letter. You might ask your parents for the instructions for the impact letter, or just the basic outline for what we call the impact letter. That's where family members, parents, typically start off. We start off with parents, but sometimes we do include siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents. You can write them kind of an impact letter type of letter, which is saying, this is what you were doing and this is how it affected me. So I would say that having him be 18, excuse me, you being 18, and you're going to be able to talk and speak to how it affected you fairly well. It doesn't mean you have to not be angry or not be upset. Probably the most important thing that I tell parents in dealing with their children that are here or their children that are at home is that allow the child to feel what he or she is feeling. You don't get to tell them what to feel, and don't try to talk them out of it. And if you're uncomfortable with what they're feeling, then you need to deal with that. So that's something I often say and talk about in the process. So it's okay for you to be angry. It's okay for you to be hurt. It's okay for you not to trust. It's okay that you're not ready to forgive. It's okay that you don't want to open up. But if you have a desire, if you want to see if it's worth it, if he's going to treat you the same way in terms of you reaching out to him, go ahead and try to reach out to him. Talk to your parents and make sure it's appropriate. But 9 times out of 10 for therapists at Evoke, if a sibling wants to write a letter like the one that I'm describing, they're going to welcome it into the program. And by the way, I would say not all the time, but most of the time, clients that I've had were more positively affected by their siblings' letters like the one that I'm describing than they were from the same letter from their parents. It doesn't happen all the time, and there's no guarantee, of course, but I saw it happen over and over. They're more open. You're not the enemy. You might not have been getting along, but you're still more of a peer than a parent is. And so, and you're not the one that sent them there. So my idea is, if you want to make it work, this is a great way. Probably even more of a reason to write them than if everything was just going wonderful. What should I say to my letter to my brother? Like I said, talk about how his behavior affected him. These are the basic things. Talk about how his behavior affected you. I felt this way. I felt this way. This is how it affected me. This is what was going on for me. Talk about what you hope he gets out of this. Like, I hope you look at whatever the issue is. If it's drugs, if it's anger, if it's, whatever it is. I hope you can look at that. Tell them that you watched a webinar. Tell them that you're open to learning about it and doing your part. If you can give him that gift, that you're going to become interested in understanding what he's going through and how you can be helpful. If you go to our website, you can look at different blogs, or you can ask your parents for a couple of the webinars. I'm going to go out of this, Michael, and then come back, so you can put me back in just a second. One of these recommended webinars, you can go to any of our, just click on this, your parents can show it to you, and these are the ones that I would recommend to parents. That I recommend to parents, that I'd recommend to siblings, starting probably with the I feel statement. The greatest gift that a sibling or parent, but I'll just say sibling now, a sibling can give to their sibling in the wilderness is to become interested and to spend some time learning about some of the things that their sibling is learning. So if you're willing to do that, those are some of the things that I could say. So how it affected me, how I felt, what I hope you get out of this, and what you're willing to do, the fact that you're willing to watch a webinar or learn something or read a book or read a blog about an issue, and how can you be helpful. I think asking him how you can be helpful, asking him what he might want from you is a great place to start also. Asking him questions about what he's learning, what can be helpful, what would he like from you. Does he have anything to say to you that he couldn't say before? And I'll say one last thing, and then I'll go on to the next question, Michael, and you can pop up the next question anytime. It's not always the same with every client, but I'll tell you this. Many of the students and clients that we have make dramatically positive changes while they're with us. And so things that wouldn't have worked before, discussions that would not have gone well before, often can go well in the letters and on the phone calls. So I just want to tell you that that's a possibility. Can he come home after wilderness? 10-year-old? It's really up to your parents. In many cases, in many situations, sometimes the students and the clients, the young people, they have to go on to a school that can continue to help them with their work. When my son went to wilderness, he went on to a school for some time, and I can remember my younger children being heartbroken and sad about it. They got to see him and talk to him more at the school as time went on, but it was very, very sad for them. So yeah, I'll say this one last thing. I say this to parents. We know that this is painful. We know that there's a lot of sadness around having your brother or your sister away and gone, and that you miss them. Sometimes it's a relief because there was a lot of fighting and problems, but there's also many times a lot of sadness. So that's just true. But what we also know is that the time, the sacrifice, the difficulty becomes worth it in the years to come. Right? It makes a big difference. That whatever he was struggling with can be healed and improved. And so I always say to parents, like around the holidays, we don't care about the holidays in 2015. We care about the ones in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and so on. That's the investment that you are making in it with your heart. So I know it's sad. I know it's hard. Your parents get to decide. They're going to make that determination after talking to professionals that they trust and learning about what's going on with your brother. And they're going to make the decision. The hardest thing to do as a parent is to make the decision that you know is the right thing, but that is so painful for everybody. What does my brother do at a vote? In fact, let me see if I have this slide. Michael, I may not have it. A day. Oh, it's sideways, but it's there. So I'm going to read it sideways. I apologize. I'll try to get that straight up and down. I don't know if I can spin it. Can't spin it. So I'll use this right here. So a typical day would be that he wakes up, that they have some kind of, they might have a meditation, or they might have a small group discussion. Then they're going to get we call it crushing coals, which means that they're cleaning up the fire from the night before. So they'll clean up the fire from the night before. Sometimes they have to crush all the coals down into powder and kind of spread them out, because we try to practice leave no trace, which means that when we leave a website, actually when we leave a camping site, we want it to look like we were never there. Then there's breakfast, then there's a morning group, and then there's a hiking time, then they have lunch, they have personal time, they have more hiking, they have chores, camp setup, they have to build a fire, build their shelter. They take a tarp, it's like a blue plastic thing that they camp and that they carry around, and they take it with cordage, which is like rope, and they make their shelter, like their tent, every night. Then they do dinner prep and eat, and then they have a group therapy session at night. But what I want to tell you is all during the day, they have therapy. All during the day, they might be frustrated, they might be getting in an argument, they might not be able to resolve an issue. And therapy happens, there's like 10 or 15 small groups that happen all of the time. They also have schoolwork that they're working on during some of their personal time. They also have therapy assignments, like books that they're supposed to read, or specific assignments that they're supposed to write. So they're working on those throughout the day too. We call those small groups standing groups. They also have individual sessions with both the therapists when they're there, because the therapists come out for 2 different days. They also have individual sessions with the staff that they're with, the people that they're with every day. Layovers are days when we don't hike, and we do a lot of things like laundry, showering, a lot of reading and writing, because it's hard to do on the days when we're doing a lot of hiking. They also get new food twice a week, so they have to pack that, and they all have to share that. I talked about personal time. The emotional work we call the emotional curriculum, but the emotional work that they're doing is they're working on like learning how to tie knots. They're learning how to make fire by rubbing sticks together. We call those are the hard skills, right? Learning how to build a shelter, that's a hard skill. And then the soft skills are things like learning not to swear or be inappropriate with your language, or learning to talk about your feelings, learning to be respectful, learning to solve problems with your peers. Those are the soft skills. Those are the therapy skills. When you're getting upset, do you blow up? Do you get depressed? Or can you learn to just feel it and talk about it? Then there are specific therapy assignments that the therapist gives them every week, and they're working on those throughout the week. They also have to do, like I said, academic work. They work on science, psychology, English, and PE. PE they get because they do all this exercise. And then they write letters throughout the week. A couple of times while they're with us, they may go on solos. Solos is for 48 to 72 hours. That's about how long, 2 or 3 days. The staff set them up, and they sit in one spot. Like maybe the size of a large room in your house, maybe a little bit bigger than that, and they cook all their own food. They sit with themselves. They think, and they might have some assignments to work on, but it's a lot of time to spend with yourself and see how you're feeling. Sometimes we're so busy doing things that we don't really focus on how we feel. So solos is a time to see how you feel. The staff come and check on them several times throughout the day, but they sit and don't talk to anybody else in the group, and they all do that. And then they have different chores, and that becomes a part of them learning how to deal with peers. And I have this phrase, grist for the mill. You can go back to the questions, Michael. Grist for the mill means that everything that goes on at a vote, everything that goes on becomes therapy. We also practice meditation. Your brother or sister is eating well and sleeping more than they ever have, and of course they're not plugged into anything electronic. They don't have access to anything electronic. So there's a lot of things that just because they're here helps them to get healthier. Exercise and diet and sleep are 3 huge helpers when it comes to being depressed or angry or anxious. And then you add on top of that meditation, and just for those things, without even talking about the therapy, it helps to get rid of a lot of the problems, the symptoms that they might be dealing with. What if you feel like their feelings are more of a means of manipulating you, 19-year-old? Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are. And sometimes they aren't, and you still feel triggered by them, right? If my wife comes to me and she says, Brad, I'm angry with you, she might be trying to manipulate me, right? That might be part of the issue. She might be trying to get me to feel guilty or do something that she wants. That's a possibility. It's also a possibility that she's just sharing how she feels, doesn't really expect anything of me, but because of my own sensitivity around anger from my wife, I feel manipulated, right? Meaning that it's hard for me when people are angry at me. It's hard for me when I let them down or when I hurt them. So the question becomes, looking at the communication, asking what the intent is, meaning, like, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me how you're feeling? What do you want from me? Right? So we start to teach them about manipulation. We start to teach them about being clear about what they're saying, but more importantly, why they're saying it. And then on the other side of it, on the listening side of it, on your side of it, it becomes your job to not be manipulated even when they're manipulating you, and especially when they're not. I have a lot of my students and clients that will write letters to their parents that are perfectly assertive, right? Very healthy. And the parents will feel manipulated. So I think a part of it is to be suspicious and skeptical and say, I'm curious if you're trying to get me to feel guilt. Like, why are you communicating? There's a blog that I wrote. For some of you that are younger, it's just this thing that I wrote a few weeks back. It's called 8 Tools for Transforming Relationships, and one of the tools for transforming relationships is ask the person who's talking to what their intent is and what they want from you. And when you're the one doing the communicating, telling somebody how you feel, tell them what you want from them and what your intent is. In other words, this is the way it looks. If I'm talking, I would say, I'm going to tell you how I feel. You don't need to do anything about it. I just want you to know how I feel. Can you do that and just listen to me? That's what it would sound like. If I'm on the listening end, I would say, I've heard what you said. I think I've heard what you said. This is what I've heard you've said. And I'm just wondering, what do you want from me? What would you like? Is there something you're asking from me? And when we start to ask for the intention or give the intention on the front end, it's very hard to be manipulative. And that gets very, very clear for both sides. So asking for the intent or giving the intent is one of the most underused tools or skills that I've ever seen. So that's a way that you can start to understand that, to pull that apart and to look at it and to see what's going on in there. Can we come to Utah for my brother's graduation as a family, please? I can't make that decision. Typically, we don't have young people come. I know it's sad. But like I said, we want to focus on the child and then the parents and then the siblings. There'll be time for visits later on in the process, and I think it's just going to be sad. It's going to be hard. You can talk to your parents about if a phone call is coming up, if you're allowed to say hi and get on the phone. But I want you to it's okay to miss him. It's appropriate to miss him. It means you love him. And I think if you get this, I would ask your parents if you can send a letter telling him, and even send a letter that they bring to the graduation that says, I wish I could have come. I even asked somebody on one of those webinars if I could come. And he said probably not, that they don't usually let that happen. And he knows that he loves you, that you love him. And when you write that letter and hand it to your parents, excuse me, I have a cold. When you write that letter and you send it along with your parents, he'll feel that love. So, when my brother relapses at home, how can I support him? Great question. For those of you who are younger, what that means is when my brother goes back to some of his old behaviors, how can I support him? The best thing that a sibling can do, and you're 17, the best thing that a sibling can do is learn about your own stuff and then be honest with him about how you feel. But I think what happens for a lot of us, parents and siblings alike, is that we don't, the question that we ask ourselves is we say, well, why do I need to look at my stuff? I'm not the one with the problem. I'm not the one with the issue. That's what parents say. Why should I watch a webinar? It's not my problem. Why am I doing parent assignments? It's not my issue. And I could give a lot of answers to that, a lot of responses to that, but the most important thing is, the thing that's going to be most helpful for people in therapy, in treatment, is when they feel safe, when they feel more willing to be open. And they're going to be more open when everybody in the family is looking at their stuff, right? They're going to be more open in the process. And being open in the process means I'm going to look at my unhealthy behavior. It might not be the same, or it might not be as much as my brother's, but I don't know about communication skills. I want to tell you guys something. I just did we call it an intensive, but it's like a retreat. I did a 3-day weekend with a family of 5, right? There was one sibling who had been in our program, 2 siblings that hadn't, and parents. And it started off with everybody focusing on the child that had come to our program and what was their problem and what was their issue. By the end of it, everybody was talking about their own issues. And none of the other family members had the same kinds of problems, or they weren't as severe as maybe the one who came to our program. But she felt by the end so honored. She even said that to me. I feel so honored that you would all be willing to work this much, and that you'd be willing to open up your heart and do some of the hard stuff that I did. The other thing that was amazing is that she knew so much about therapy and communication that nobody else in the family knew. And she could see and hear things that other people couldn't. So it's just one example. If your family wants to do a retreat, you could do that, right? That's something that would be a wonderful gift. But look at a couple of the webinars. Read a book that's on the reading list that your brother is reading. Learn, open up, look at your stuff, your mistakes, your issues. Don't be the expert. And then tell him honestly, be honest with him about how you feel. And if he's doing something that you're not comfortable with, then I think it's okay to say, I'm not comfortable with this. And I'm also not comfortable keeping your secrets anymore. It's okay to say. Like, if you're going to do these old things, and I'm going to find out about them, I'm not promising that I'm going to keep the secret. It's not my job. And if you put me in that position, that's not okay with me. And you get to say those things. You get to say what you feel comfortable with. You get to say what's not okay with you. You get to not keep secrets, his secrets, if you don't want to. You get to do all of that. And if he gets mad at you, that's about him, not about you. If he's abusive to you or disrespectful to you, that's about him. That's not about you. Me and my brother, who's at Evoke, have many of the same friends. Oops. It does that sometimes, Michael. Me and my brother, who's at Evoke, have many of the same friends. Now that he's away, how do I stay away from the friends that we're using? 15-year-old brother. It's hard. When I was a teenager, I was sent away to a program for abusing substances. And one of the things that they would always talk about is, they say that they have this little saying that they talk about when when people are abusing. They say, when you get clean, you have to change your playmates and your playground. They used to say that to us, right? They teach that. You can't, if you're an alcoholic, it's probably not a good idea to go into a bar, right? If you have diabetes, don't go into a candy store, right? And so if you're using and you're at risk for using, or even if you're just not comfortable with that stuff, you can't be around people that are doing it. A lot of people think, well, I'll be the strong one. I'll be the good example. They support me. They would never let me use. Sometimes people say that. It doesn't tend to always go that way. It often goes the other direction. That's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I would say to you is this. When I got clean, when I got off substances, no one had to tell me not to hang around them. I didn't want to. It wouldn't have worked for me. That's what they were doing, and when they were doing it, at first I thought I could do it. At first I thought I would be the good example, and they were totally supportive of me not using, all of them. But that's what they were doing a lot of the time. And eventually, I succumbed to it. But when I finally got clean, when I finally got off all that stuff, I stopped hanging around them, and not one person needed to tell me to do that. So I think a lot of times that when you, it's what you feel comfortable with. It's what you're okay with, and what you're vulnerable to. And if you're vulnerable to that stuff, if that's a risk for you, if you've had some problems with that, or even if it's a risk because you and your brother hang around the same people, you can also do that for him as a support to him. But most people who get clean, most people who change their behavior in a healthy way, don't hang out with the people that they were hanging out with before if they're doing the inappropriate behavior. It's not because they have to or can't. It's because that's what works. We just know that. A person who has a problem with drugs and alcohol, they don't go to bars and hang out if they want to get clean. What does my sister eat? That's a great question. I'll tell you something funny. They eat so many beans and rice. There's a lot of farting out there, actually. If you were out there in the group, you'd hear a lot of girls and boys farting a lot of times. So they eat a lot of beans and rice. They eat a lot of vegetables. 1 or 2 nights a week, they'll have some meat. They have a lot of pasta for their dinners. For lunches, they have a trail mix. They have cheese and meat, tuna, fish. They have tortillas. They make the kind of burritos with the tortillas for lunch. For breakfast, they eat a lot of oats, like hot cereal. They eat a lot of granola for breakfast. And then sometimes they have special treats. But they eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of organic food. They don't have hardly any sugar, right? Not many preservatives at all. We try to give them the healthiest meal. They eat more vegetables and fruits, most of them do, than they've been eating for a long time. Lots of vegetables and fruits. And lots of grains. They do get bacon. They love bacon, a lot of them. In the wintertime, foods that have fat in it help keep you warm. So they eat bacon. Then they get really good at cooking it. Just this weekend, when I did my weekend with the family that I talked about, we ate the same beans and rice and vegetables, and it was delicious. We put it over chicken, but I had a second helping of just the beans and rice. It's really, really good. And when a group gets good at it, it's so fun and it tastes so good. But it's not fast food, and it's not sugar. That's for sure. No McDonald's, no pizza. Although sometimes they make pizza. Is my brother going to make very close friends, and that he will remember in the future? A lot of times they do. A lot. I talked to some of my old students that have graduated. I talked to one that graduated 10 years ago, and they still keep in contact with them. A lot of them do. It's not always the case, but usually they'll keep in contact with them, especially now with Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter. They keep in contact with a lot of them. And if they are getting better, they keep around. It's really good for them to keep in contact with the healthy ones that are getting better also. If the old ones are going back into old behaviors, it can be really not helpful to stay in contact with those. But the ones that I know, if they're doing better, they don't hang around the ones that are not doing better. They might know about it, but they don't hang around with them or spend time with them. But it's really great when two people are getting better and they keep in contact because they have this experience that nobody else has. They have this shared kind of this common experience that can be really helpful. And they know things that other people don't know. That's the amazing thing, you guys, is that your brothers and sisters who are out there, they're going to learn things that most people don't get to learn in their life. It is like, I had a former client years ago talk to a bunch of parents at a meeting. And somebody said, what's the best thing about your experience in coming home? And he's like, the best thing about it is that when I hear people talking, when I hear my friends say something, he was in college, he said, when I hear people say things, I hear things that nobody else hears. I understand what manipulation is. I understand when somebody's being indirect. I understand what somebody's feeling even when they don't, because I've been trained to learn how people feel and how they communicate. So it's really cool. And it's nice to keep in contact with somebody who's had that same kind of education, that same kind of experience. It's fantastic. How does my brother cope with bad weather and days of rain and snow? I feel so bad for him. How does he cope? Well, first of all, we have great gear. Great gear. Great jackets, great sleeping bags, great boots, wonderful stuff. So that's the first thing. But it's hard. It's for sure hard. And you know what's amazing about it is they learn to ignore it. After a while, they get used to it, and they get so strong. A lot of times when they first come with us in the wintertime, they say, I can't do this, I can't do this. I can't do it. They keep saying that. And then like 5 or 6 weeks later, we have to remind them to put their jacket on in a snowstorm because they're so used to it. So they build up a strength. The big word is resiliency. That's the big word, but really a strength. And I'll say one other thing that the harsh weather does for them, because we have harsh weather in all the seasons outdoors. Being outside in the summertime is not easy, and in the spring and in the fall is not easy either. There's rain, there's bugs. In the summertime, there's lots of mosquitoes, there's lots of heat. It's really hot. There's a lot of rain in the springtime, even when it's warm, and in the summertime in our programs, there can be a lot of thunderstorms outside, and that's hard to do. But let me tell you what being outside in the tough weather does also. They learn that everything takes work. That to stay dry and to stay warm, you have to work. You can't take it for granted. You can't be lazy. And so part of what living in wilderness does is it teaches you to not take anything for granted, that things don't come easily. And that's part of the thing that we want them to learn about in life, right? Sometimes the students that come to us, they kind of take the easy way, or they don't work hard, or they're lazy, or they take a shortcut, or they cheat. And you can't cheat nature. You can't cheat a snowstorm. You can't take a shortcut. Some students will be really lazy when they build their tent or their shelter at night, and then the rain or the snow comes, and we warn them. And then the rain or the snow comes, and then their shelter blows off, and then they're getting rained on. Then we all have to get up, get around the fire, get them dry, and help them build their tent in the middle of the night. And they learn that lesson without us having to lecture them. They just learn it because it's right there. So they get stronger. We have great gear. And it teaches them to work for things. They learn, and the coolest thing about it, I'll answer this question in just a second. The coolest thing is that they learn more gratitude than they've ever had. Because when you work for things, you learn to be more grateful. They develop a lot of gratitude. And most of them are sad to leave. I was just talking to a student just this weekend. And the one thing she said is, I was surprised at how sad I was to leave. Even though I wanted to leave, I was also surprised at how sad I was to leave. Will my parents ever realize my brother is sad because no matter how hard he tries to live up to who they want him to be, and that is not who I think he really is, they are always disappointed and angry with him? Now he has given up, 23-year-old. If that's the dynamic, absolutely. But they've got to be willing to work. And I don't know your parents, but if they're the ones who are saying, this is not our problem, right? He's the one with the problem. If that's their approach to this, my answer is probably not. But if they say, I want to look at my stuff, I want to look at what I say and how I act and the relationship that we have, then hopefully. We do I have a book. I'll click on that for the siblings, because some of them are older siblings. And I would recommend this to you also. And it comes out in paper book in a few days, actually. But it's on hardback right now. I have to go to the slides. Right here. Oops, sorry, I apologize. Oh, it's gone. Oh, there's my book. So if they look at this book, if they read this book, it will tell them just what you said. And I don't know if they're willing to do that. If they're willing to do their work, there's a very good chance that they're going to see the dynamic, the dance, the interaction with your brother. They're going to see their pieces of it. And it's not going to come with a lot of guilt. It's not about blame, right? It's just about looking at your stuff. Right? That's my belief about it, is that everybody on this webinar could use help. I went to the gym this morning, and I go to a trainer. I have somebody who trains me at the gym. And I could go to the gym by myself, and that's okay. But when I go to the gym with a trainer, it is way better. So having a therapist, doing some work, there's a lot of work we ask them to do. If they're willing to do it, they'll absolutely see that. And they won't have a lot of guilt around it. They'll get rid of their guilt enough so that they can look at their stuff. But most parents have a difficult time because to look at stuff to be accountable is so frightening. They need to be good. They want to be good. They don't want it to be their fault. And all of those, we call that shame. All that shame that they have prevents them from being able to look at their humanness. The greatest leaders, I always say, were the most humble. If you said something negative about Gandhi, some of you know who Gandhi is. If you said something negative about Gandhi, he would say, yeah, you have no idea. I really struggle with that. I make a lot of mistakes. And then you say something like to Tupac. I don't know if some of you know who Tupac is. You insult him, and what does he do? He gets defensive and angry. People that feel good about themselves know that they have lots of issues and problems. And they don't have so much guilt and shame that they can't see them and look at them and be okay with looking at them. So that's my long answer to your question. What will my brother do with his close friends when he comes home if they were the main problem? It depends on what he wants to do. If he wants to get better, he'll probably recognize that it's not going to work. If he wants to get better, but he's overconfident, usually that happens, they're overconfident, or they underestimate, they don't see how powerful friends are, he'll say, well, I'll just hang around them, and I'll be the good example, and they'll support me. And if that becomes his attitude, most of the time, he's going to be in trouble, he's going to struggle. And sometimes he has to experiment, like I did. When I came out of my program, I thought I could hang around my friends, and I couldn't. It didn't work at all. But I learned that I tried it, didn't work, and then I figured it out, and then that's why when I finally got clean, nobody had to tell me. Not one person told me not to hang around my friends when I got clean, because I knew already, because I figured it out, because I experimented with trying it, and it didn't work. That's one of the reasons why the therapy goes on after Evoke to some of these schools, is because it helps them to develop new relationships, to spend more time away, and that can be helpful. Why do they use a tarp for sleeping instead of a tent? Great question. Because we want them to build it into a tent, because it takes a little bit more creativity and a little bit more skills. They get really good at it, and they set it up every bit as well as a tent. It's also easier to set them up in some of the areas that we're at. Tents would be hard. They'd be heavier and harder to carry and hard to set up. They would break easier. So a tarp is just this thing, and then it looks like a tent. When you walk up to it, it actually looks like a tent. If you go to our Facebook page, and you can see some pictures of them, and they look. This is the A-frame. We call that one an A-frame because it looks like an A, and it looks just like a tent. Then they sometimes do what's called a burrito, where they just wrap, when they're being lazy, they just wrap it around themselves. I never like a burrito because I feel claustrophobic. Then they have a lean-to, which is a tent that is tied to like a wall or a tree like this, just one way. That's a lean-to. And then there's different kinds. They have just sometimes they'll just tie it to a tree like this, flat, so it's just like a ceiling. So they have depending upon where they are and what the terrain is like. There's different ways, but it's definitely lasts more than tents. Tents would break all the time. In the wintertime, sometimes they'll go to a tent. In the extreme weather. That's another thing. And these tents have wood-burning stoves, and they can go to those in the severe winter in Utah. I read your book, and it has transformed my relationship with my sister, and I've also used the tools you provided in your book and other relationships in my life. It is a book for more than just parent-child relationships. I recommend it to everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Let me tell you something. You said that. You're absolutely right. The book is not about being a parent. It's about being a human being in relationship with other human beings. And it's about figuring out who you are and what your stuff is. There's a reviewer on Amazon who talked about that. I said, I don't have kids, and this changed my relationships. And so, because the relationship that I have with my children, and I have 4 children, the relationship that I have with my children is a lot about me. And if I change my communication, if I change my skills, if I change my way of talking and listening to my children, I'm going to change the way I talk to my friends, to my employees, to my boss, to my professors, whomever I come in contact with. So absolutely. That's how you know when the lesson you're being taught is true, is because it applies to everything. It's one of the ways that you know, at least. Thank you for mentioning that. For some of you that are older, I would say probably what? Maybe 17 or older. I think it could be a good book. When my parents visit my brother, did they sleep in a tarp with him? Yes. I even slept in a tarp with my son when he was in the wilderness, and it was raining like crazy. And we kept dry all night long. So yes, if they're going to do an overnight stay, they will sleep in a tarp that he will make. He will also cook for them. And he'll be good at it. And it's really nice for them to be able to cook and take care of their parents and kind of switch it around from the way that it was before. All right, for those of you who attended, if you want a t-shirt, email me your size and your address. You can email me at brad@evoketherapy.com. So if you're a sibling and you want a t-shirt and you tell me you're going to take a picture of it and send it to your brother or sister, I'd be willing to send you a t-shirt. So send me your if you're male or female and your size, and I'll do my best. They run a little bit small, so if you're on the border between large and extra large, go to the higher size. So I'd be happy to do that. All right, that's all the questions for tonight. Thank you so much. It was great talking to all of you. I hope it's helpful. Hope it makes you feel more connected. And you can watch this for just a second. These are the upcoming parent. This is how much we do with parent work. So these are the upcoming parent workshops are coming up. So we want all parents to go to the Toronto workshop if they can. Everyone that can. These intensives are the ones that we do that are much more therapeutic and deep. We can do them as family. We have a Heroic Journeys version. If your family wants to do a private one, we can do private ones. And we can also switch the March. Let's say your family wanted to do one of the March or the April one, and there are no people that have signed up for it. If you do it in time, then we would change it to a family one or to your family one, depending upon what you want. So those are the email addresses for those different things. You can check out our website on the intensive page. Here are the upcoming parent support groups. We have one in Los Angeles, the Bay Area, New York City, and in Houston, it's going to be March 16th. And in Chicago, it's going to be April 20th. So March 16th and April 20th. That's when those are going to be. Email Stephanie at Evoke Therapy to let us know that you're going to be there, or if you have any more questions about it. Anybody who's in the program, anybody who's been to the program can come to those. If it's an older sibling and you want to come, that's great. I'd say over 18. If you want to come, that's okay. There's a pursuits program. This is canyoneering, climbing, things like that. We have really cool places in Utah, and we have some really great guides. And so this is for young adults and for families, so you can look at our website about that. We want all parents to go to 6 of these while their students are with us, while their children are with us. So we want you to go to any number of 6. You can go to 6 Al-Anon, you can go to 1 of each, but 6 times while you're with us. Follow us on social media for the people that also have it. You can follow us on Twitter or Instagram at Evoke Therapy. Facebook is Evoke Therapy Programs, or you can go to our blog and find different articles. You can just kind of look through the topics and see if there's anything. Like I said, here's the book. It's on the hard copies that are left are on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. After the 19th this month, the paperbacks are gonna go to everywhere, and then you can go to our book foundation page and buy things, and part of the money goes to charity. All right. The next webinar will be this Thursday, January 14th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. This Thursday, January 14th. If you're a parent and you have a child who's a sibling, you're welcome to show this webinar. We'll keep this in the archive for some time. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the great questions tonight. And we will take good care of your brother and sister and help them to be happy. So have a great evening, and I will talk to some of you this Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.